Two shocking double murders hit a quiet Omaha neighborhood over the course of 5 years. Residents were worried a killer was hitting random targets when a schoolboy and his family's housekeeper were stabbed to death in their home in 2008. Then, 5 years later, a similar gruesome scene when a doctor and his wife were found stabbed to death in 2013. Similarities at both crime scenes led investigators to an unexpected suspect. Jim Axelrod has a preview.
From the beginning, this was strange. It happened in Dundee. It's a classic neighborhood, the heart of Omaha. Violent crime does not happen in Dundee. The mundane world of after school, and then it's just shattered by a monster.
I remember walking in their front door into this very nice home. There's a little boy lying face down in a very large pool of blood.
You know, you think of Tommy Hunter, and you can't imagine what the last few seconds of his life were like.
Smart kid, loves science, math. Every parent's son.
And then as you walk through the house and you get to the back door, you see this large pool of blood, and this lady who had very evidently been pushed down to the ground and attacked.
Shirley Sherman, grandma, gentle soul, hardworking.
To have anybody murdered is a shock to the community, but to have an 11-year-old boy and a housekeeper killed in the manner they were, I think is a whole nother level.
There didn't appear to be anything missing in the house.
No robbery.
No, there was no readily explainable reason behind what you see.
On that day, one of the neighbors happened to notice a car that she wasn't familiar with.
It was a fleeting glance at him and his vehicle. Silver Honda CR-V. Things went cold after the first couple months.
How frustrated were you getting?
Incredibly, I don't even know if I can put it into words.
Beautiful Mother's Day. Tragedy strikes again.
Dr. Roger Brumback and his wife, Mary, murdered.
Detective, do you remember the first time you walked into this house?
I do.
What did it look like?
The aftermath of an incredibly brutal murder.
Roger Brumback devoted portions of his medical career to childhood disease and then to Alzheimer's. Mary Brumback could not have had an enemy in the world.
When you walk through that first door, Scott and I had a real definitive moment after we walked through that house where we're like, you know, I've seen these things before, specifically with the wounds to the right side of the neck. You don't see a lot of knifings or stabbings that are like that.
When had the last time been that you had seen stabbings like that?
It was 2008 with Thomas and Shirley.
The mindset at that point was, there's a connection here.
Light bulb must have gone off very brightly.
It's incredible on so many levels. You can't help but be touched by the innocence of all of these victims. And then it's in peaceful neighborhoods on beautiful days. This is a once-in-a-lifetime type story.
Susan Zirinsky is senior executive producer of 48 Hours, and she joins me now. Wow, the suspense. You know, these killings, they all had this similar method, and the detective there sort of saying, I know where I'd seen this before.
Well, that was the chilling thing. And this is really a story about how law enforcement, we hear a lot about bad cops, but sometimes we look at a story and it gets solved because of the commitment of the policemen and the detectives and the homicide investigators. And this is one of those cases. When they describe walking into the second scene where the doctor and his wife had been killed 5 years later, and so much is eerily similar. Stab wounds on the right side of the neck. And it's like the game of Clue. They kept putting together pieces and relationships, and it all led back to Crichton University Hospital And that's where they began to unravel this insane mystery.
And these disgruntled staff members.
They looked at several different people, but there was one guy that had been fired, and fired by the man whose son Hunter had died, by the doctor, and in a team of people. And so, you know, here is a doctor who took the Hippocratic oath of, I'm going to save people.
Right.
Could it possibly be a young medical student who didn't do such a good job, who'd been fired? And that's where the mystery is.
So there's the youngest victim in this story, and that victim has been remembered in a special way.
Yeah, there's a very touching statue that has been erected outside the hospital about this little child. You know, I think when crimes occur, nobody can accept anything, but when a child who has come home from school in the most innocent, just kind of normal pattern, got a snack, went down to play his video games, when the crime happens, that's when you really get to you. And I think that's what's so touching about this story is the cop's dedication, the crime of an innocent kid and the housekeeper who herself was a beloved grandmother. That's when you kind of say, you know, enough, stop. But these detectives, they solved this case. And you know, interestingly enough, the parents of the man who ends up being the suspect they talked to us, and we were the only people they talked to. They couldn't wrap their brain that their son is accused, and that this is the story of what happens, and was he in fact the right man that they accused?
I cannot wait to watch how it all resolves. Susan Zirinsky, always great to have you. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you.
Thank you. And you can watch the full 48 hours Resident Evil tomorrow night at 10, 9 Central on CBS.